9 December 1942. A gray morning, and the enemy is firing with all his heavy weapons into the village and into our positions. Until noon, we can peer only with the utmost of caution over the edges of our bunkers. The terrible waiting game has begun again. The Soviets are undoubtedly getting their own back for the dive bomber attacks, which today will not take place owing to the poor visibility. During the afternoon, they attacked the village from both the east and along the railway line from the south. We, however, are not involved. If they do not manage to take the village, they will be able to attack us from two sides and leave us vulnerable to a pincer movement. We wait and pray that they will not succeed. The fight for the village lasts several hours. Then the reserve unit manages to counterattack and drive the Russians back out of the village again. The losses are great. 6 dead and many wounded. 11 December. The entire sky is gray today, and so visibility is limited. Since early morning, shells have been exploding all around us. The Russians don't want to give us any respite, it seems. Because of the explosions, we don't hear any engine noises and don't realize the danger, which is about to descend on us. Suddenly, like phantoms, 5 T-34 tanks are standing in front of us. They surprise not only us, but also the crew of the 88mm gun deployed for ground support behind us on the knoll. Before the crew tank can converse the long barrel to aim the tanks, all 5 of the latter fire simultaneously. This surprise fire at this short range means the end for the 88. Surprisingly, the crew manages to destroy one of the 5 tanks before receiving 2 direct hits. We see pieces of armor and bodies fly through the air. The men are killed instantly. The 4 T-34s now advance triumphantly directly towards us. The Russian infantry clinging on like grapes. But the Quad AA is still firing. Its tracer rounds are hitting the tanks and are forcing the infantry to get down and seek cover behind their vehicles. 2 T-34s are nearing the edge of the trench in front of us but turn away. They drive along it with their sides towards us until they come to Meinhardt's position. This is an opportunity every tank destroyer dreams about. However, they know that we no longer have any means to destroy them. We fire from all barrels on the infantry following the tanks, but the latter keep on rolling until they come to Meinhardt's position. Some of the Russians who have dared to advance towards us are cut down by our fire. Hand grenades explode close to Varius and Meinhardt. Then suddenly Meinhardt's machine gun stops firing, although all the others continue. The tracer rounds from the Quad AA switch over our heads, aimed at the waves of Soviet infantry soldiers bearing down. Without the Quad, we would have been overrun long ago. The sappers are also firing their 2 machine guns from our flank into the decimated ranks of the Soviet infantry. The first tank halts on top of Meinhardt's position. The engine roars more loudly. He is now turning on the spot and churning up the ground with his tracks as he does so. The Quad AA is now firing at point-blank range at the T-34 with explosive rounds, but they have no more effect on the thick turret armor than firecrackers. Then it happens. The tank that has broken through our lines to our right is firing at close range directly at the Quad. The second round hits and smashes the weapon. Pieces of metal and various body parts fly through the air and land back on the snow over a wide area. The torn-off leg, still wearing a felt boot, hits the ground only a few meters from us. The blood, pumping out of the leg slowly, colors the snow red. We look at each other helplessly. Our faces flushed. Despite the cold, sweat is running down from my forehead into my eyes. My mouth is dry and my tongue is glued to the roof of my palate. Now the tanks are free to roam about, roll up our positions, and take them over. Then there will be nothing to prevent them from advancing into the village and wreaking havoc there. But at least they have mines in the village, and one of the tanks might not be serviceable. More than that, we don't know. One of the tanks stays near us and continues to churn up the ground. Another plows up the ground near Zeidel and further over on the right flank, while a third tries to get to the village over the hill. The 4th tank has already managed to negotiate the hill and is firing continuously into the village. In spite of our determined defense, several Soviet soldiers still managed to break into our positions. They are disarmed by Düring and his men in hand-to-hand fighting. Now only my machine gun and those of the two sappers are still firing. Weichert, who feeds my ammo belt, complains about the poor quality of the ammunition and the many cartridges which are torn by the ejectors in the breeches. We only have one replacement barrel left in reserve. Schweine stands beside me, firing a carbine as fast as he can. He stays there, reloading with nervous hands. I don't see Gromo, as he is standing several meters beyond Weichert. He quickly throws him 2 machine gun barrels with cartridges plugged in the breeches. Unplug the casings, Kleinen. You were good at that, he calls to him. Just then, he ducks down and exclaims in astonishment, Bugger, now the T-34 has discovered our machine gun nest. The T-34 turns its turret towards our position and comes at us, its engine roaring. I pull my machine gun into the trench and now throw myself down. Rommel and Weichert dash into the bunker. Schweine is already lying behind me in the trench. A harsh metallic shot, and a tank shell explodes exactly where my machine gun once stood. Frozen dirt and hot splinters rain down over my head. There is a loud ringing in my ears, and it feels as if my eardrum has just been perforated. The acrid powder is sucked into my nose and fills my lungs. But I live, and so does Schweine. I can hear his convulsive coughing behind me. And there it is again, the rattle and the roaring as steel tank tracks grind, squealing on their rollers. A deathly noise. I press myself like a worm onto the ground. In the trench, everything goes dark. The steel monsters parked directly on top of me, blocking out the daylight. Now the sharp steel tracks are tearing up the edge of the trench. Frozen blocks of dirt fall onto my back and half cover me. Will the monster bury me alive? I remember soldiers telling me that tanks have turned on top of foxholes until the men below could no longer move and suffocated in the dirt. Terrible way to die. I'm panic-stricken. Maybe it's safer with the others in the bunker. I crawl on my knees to join them, and Schweine follows me. The bunker is almost dark, and I can hardly recognize the faces of the others, but I sense the fear and the restlessness in the air. The tank now stands on top of us. What will he do? Will he turn to try to collapse the bunker? The earth is frozen solid, but will the roof of the bunker be able to take the weight? Terrible minutes tick by, during which we can do nothing but wait. Wait for death? We might try to dispatch it with a mine where magmatic shakes charge, but we have neither of these on hand, so we can only hope and pray that death will pass us by. I hear Schweine starting to pray out loud, and I feel that I also need to steady my nerves by prayer. I have prayed since I was a child, believing in my youth that I was strong enough not to need the help of a higher being. But now, facing death and fearing for my life, those long-forgotten words come to mind. I don't say them out loud like Schweine and the others. I pray quietly within, without moving my lips. I pray that we will be safe from serious injury and from a ghastly death. Although nothing in our situation has changed, I do sense after my prayer an inner peace and faith, which I can't explain very well in words. Schweine has also finished. He looks over at Weichert, who sits in a pile of sheaves on the ground and stares up at the ceiling. Rommel's breathing is loud and excited. He also gazes upwards. Whenever the tank fires a shot, the roof vibrates and dirt and snow fall down between the beams and planks onto our steel helmets. As the engine roars and the steel colossus again moves off, clods of frozen earth fall into the bunker and give us more of a glimpse of the tank track. Not buried alive, that's my main concern. Weichert and the others are panic-stricken. Out of here, he cries in alarm. And this is the first one to the door. There are lumps of ice in front of the door. Weichert pushes him away with his feet and manages to squeeze out. The trench is half full of dirt and snow, and my machine gun is buried underneath it all. Further over in the trench, several Russian soldiers are moving around, and Varias and Zaido are lobbing hand grenades over there. We can hear the sappers still firing from their trench. Grenades explode over us and land in front of our position. The sappers are trying to provide crossfire with their mortars. It stops the Russian infantry, but not the tank. The tank finally departs and moves towards the village. We realize that we have been dead lucky. because the tracks show that the tank actually missed our bunker and only churned up the earth at the left edge. It is now firing at the sappers' machine gun positions. We watch in horror as their position takes a hit and realize that the machine gun is now useless. Then he turns and comes back. The T-34 is now shooting at will in the connecting trenches. He rolls over them and turns around, churning up the frozen ground and filling them. Two soldiers, frightened and desperate, jump up and try to flee the trench. Seconds later, they are cut down by the tank's machine gun. Another soldier bravely throws a hand grenade against the tank's turret. It smashes against it like a snowball on a wall. The man does not get away quickly enough and is ground down by the tank's tracks. The turret hatch opens and several hand grenades are lobbed into the trench. While I desperately try to dig my machine gun out from the dirt, Schweiner throws a hand grenade at two Russians who are storming towards us. They fall and writhe around in the snow. Weichert has no time to reload his carbine, so he snatches Grommels out of his hands and fires at the Russian who is about to jump into our trench. I hit the second Russian with a pistol shot. Blood drips from the wound in his throat. Crying, he runs back. Others run with him. Again, we have a little air. There are only a few Russians in the trenches now, but the T-34 churns on. He grinds down everything under him, and there's no one able to destroy him. Will this be the end? Will a single T-34 be able to destroy us all? The air is filled with terror, and also with anger and helplessness in the face of the steel monster. Another soldier whose nerves cannot stand the pressure of being in the trench gets up and out, and the tank turns around and runs him down, tearing him in half. A terrible sight to behold. Rommel's stomach turns, and he crawls back into the bunker. The tank churns over the position again and again. Then he slowly approaches our bunker. Are we next? Does he know that we're still here and still alive? What should we do? Running away is no good, but the bunker could be our grave. In my subconscious, I hear several detonations in the village, and I remember the other tank. But my thoughts are concentrated on the steel colossus, which is now coming right at us. Its engine screaming. It is firing at everything that moves. And in between the shots, its machine gun rattles, spraying the blind spots. Is there no hope of salvation? In despair, I send a quick prayer up to heaven and notice that the others, helpless, are seeking cover. Will the monster miss us this time? Surely we won't be so lucky a second time. Or will we? I take one last look at the T-34, which is no more than 30 meters away. Then I suddenly feel transported from hell to heaven. My fright dissipates, and instead my blood begins to pump in excitement. Everything around me is forgotten, and I see only the tractor pulling the anti-tank gun appear over the hillock. Even before it comes to a halt, 3 men jump down, and in no time the gun is detached and swung into position. The gun layer is already turning his wheel to aim the weapon at the tank. Then the tank notices the ATG. The protagonists are no more than 100 meters apart. Slowly, the tank turret turns around, seeking its target. Who will fire first? It must be the ATG, but will he hit the enemy? That first shot will decide the outcome. I call the others out of the bunker and almost fall over in my excitement. Then a report tears through the charged air. A lightning-like explosion illuminates the surroundings, and with it comes the hit, right on the turret of the T-34. Seconds later comes another hit, lifting the turret and moving it sideways off the tank. Hurrah! A yell of delight issues from many a raw throat. The amazing release from the terrible despair of the last few hours. Saved. We were literally saved in the last second. Those wonderful fellows with the ATG won the battle with their first shot, cheating the hand of death hovering over us. I feel like giving that crew an enormous hug because of their heroic efforts. Schweiner, Rommel, and Eichert are straight away back to their old selves. As if stunned by a bee, 2 Russians now dash out of Düring's bunker in our jubilation. We hadn't noticed them. They're running for their lives back to where they came from. Those shots are fired. Now there's a temporary ceasefire from both sides. We can't stand it in the trenches any longer. We climb out. And with us, they all stream like rats out of their holes, dirty, pale, but happy that they have survived. To our dismay and great sorrow, Durin and 2 of his men also are among the dead. Among us in the trenches, Varius and Zeidel remain unscathed. Cooper was wounded in the head and shoulder and was driven down to the village with the other casualties. Meinhardt lost his machine gun because he had not managed to snatch it away before the tank tracks crushed it. Wilke survived the nightmare. Most of the soldiers from ATG are now in the trenches, and Weitschert and I go over to see them and give them our heartfelt thanks for saving us. The ground between us and the hillock is all churned up and mixed in with snow. A new and peculiar type of odor is in the air. It comes from the mangled human flesh that covers the ground. I have somehow become used to seeing dead bodies, but this is a completely new and frightful experience. Those who lie here are not just dead bodies, with one wound in them or possibly with one part missing. Here are individual lumps of flesh from arms, legs, and buttocks, and in one instance from the head, onto which part of a damaged helmet still clings. These are the remains of the men of the 88mm AA gun and the Quad MG, both of which received direct hits from the T-34 and were blown apart, blasted into the air. I feel so miserable as we stumble forward.